In this lesson, we will learn how to use function components in React. So React has two basic kinds of components, class components and function components. In the earlier lessons, the kind of components we have defined and used are class components. So a class component extends the component class in React. They are called the smart or stateful components as they tend to implement logic and state. So we have the state defined in those components, and then we use set state and everything to update the state. Also, React lifecycle methods can be used inside class components. So if we have learned about the most important React lifecycle elements like component did mount, component did update, component will unmount. So those can be accessed within class components. And remember the rule, we always define the render method within a class component. On the other hand, function components, instead of being a class, are basically JavaScript functions. They are referred to as dumb or stateless components because they do not have state in them. They're mainly defined or used for rendering UI, and the lifecycle methods cannot be used in function components. So we do not have state and we cannot use the lifecycle methods in a function component. And there is no render method used in the function component. The return of that function component is the render. So let's look at a few examples and it will become clear. So how do we define a function component? So here we have defined a function component React. So we are not extending component or anything. It's function welcome and it returns a JSX h1 welcome student. So this is a function component. We could have also defined the function as an arrow function. So const welcome is equal to, and the same thing defined as an arrow function. So both are identical. The first one is using the function syntax. This one is using the arrow function syntax. Although state is not available in a function component, props are available. So how do we use props? So suppose there is a props being passed here. So in a class component, we would have said this.props.name. Here there is no this, we just access props.name. So it's a parameter, it's a JSON. So we will just do props.name. So that props is being passed to the function. The same thing as an arrow function, the props are coming in as a parameter to the function and we use it in the same way. So this is how we typically define and use function component. Let's do a couple of exercises and it will become really clear. So the first exercise we want to do is create two function components, hello and bye, which show appropriate messages, and then render them or run them and test them. So let's start defining our hello. Import React from React function hello. It does not take any props, and we can just say return a JSX, say h4 hello welcome to function components, and then we will just export default hello. So this is how we have defined this component hello. Similarly, we can define our component by import React from React function by, or let's define by as using using an arrow function. So const by is equal to return by end of say class, and we can just do the same thing, export default by. So we have defined our hello and our by, and let us just use them in our main component. So in our main component, like we import our class components, we have imported our function components hello and by, and we can just use it. So, and then we put in the by. And let's enclose them within a say div. So we have created it in main component. Let's run it and see. Failed to compile, your render method should have a return statement. So this should have been return and let's test it now. And we get hello, welcome to function components by end of class. We didn't put a tag. Let's change that. In by, we could have put in say an h4. So it will create a JSX, and now if we test it, we get hello, welcome to function components by end of class. So we have created two function components here, hello and by, and then use them within the main component. Next, what do we want to do? Also pass the props name and course to the components. So in the main component, we want to pass the props, say name is equal to Jack, course is equal to say function, or let's call it say React. And here we call it say topic is equal to function component. So these are the props being passed. So in hello, we are getting our props as a parameter, and let's display props dot name, hello props dot name, welcome to the course on props dot course. So here, because props is being passed as a parameter, so that's the JSON. So we can just do props.name and props.course. Similarly here, end, we have the props being passed. So end of class on, and we can just say props.topic. So those were the props being passed. Let's go ahead and test it. So we get hello Jack, welcome to the course on React by end of class on function component. So props have been used. So we pass the props to hello and by, and we use them. Note that in the main component need not know whether it's a class component or a function component. It just uses it in the same way. Next, what do we want to do? Create a function component lectures, which takes an array of lectures as props and displays them. So here in the main component, in the state, we have this array of lectures, and we just pass it as props to the component lectures. So our objective is now to define this component lectures as a function component. So let's start doing it. So we get the props here, and what do we need to define? We need to display the name and the number of likes. So let's do that. Let legs is equal to props dot, what is the name of the props? Lectures. Return, let's put it say within a div, legs dot map L1 such that, and we display the value. So let's say put it in an h5 tag, L1 dot name likes is equal to L1 dot likes. So we can just use the map and display them. And what do we need to do? Export default lectures. So this should work for us. Let's go ahead and test it. So we can see lecture 1, introduction to lectures, and we should have likes is equal to 0 and so on. So we have used exactly the same way that we use map and all of that, and we have used it within a function component. Next, what do we want to do? Add a like button to increment likes. Do it by passing an appropriate props to the component. So we want to increment the likes, and this data is stored in the state of the main component. So we will pass a function and we will use that to increment the likes. So let's do that. So here let's also define say a button and within the button say like. So this is the like button that we have defined, and let's say on click is equal to, and this is where we need the props. So let's say pass a props click like, and we pass say the L1 dot name. So we are clicking the like of this lecture. Once we have done that, what do we need? In the main component, we will need to pass this function also. So click like is equal to say this dot handle like. Let's define this function here. Handle like is equal to, it takes the name of the lecture, and what does it do? Let lectures is equal to this dot state dot lectures. Let equal to lectures dot find say L1 such that L1 dot name is equal to name. Once we have found it, we can just increment the lect dot likes plus plus, and we can this dot set state lectures is lectures. So we have created this function. Now this should work. Let's go ahead and test it. So we have the like button. If I click on it, see the number of likes is increasing, and so on. So what we saw here was say in the definition in the main component, we are using it exactly the same way as we would have used a class component or a function component. The main component does not know whether lectures is a class component or a function component. And we were able to define the lectures very similar to how we defined a class component. So we got the function as a props and we used it, and we also used map and the other things to display it. So this is how we use function components.